This video will show outboard engine, preps, starting the engine, a hard start, and an easy start, reverse, and steering.
It's about starting an outboard engine the safe and Columbia approved way. When you first get to the boat, you're going to want to reach behind the gas can here and pull out your outboard engine checklist. This has all the steps you'll need to start the engine. First thing you're going to want to do is drop the engine in the water. So on the side of the engine, there's a little black tab on the starboard side or the right-hand side of the engine. You apply a little upward pressure, pull the tab up, and the engine should drop straight down into the water. You want to make sure it's all the way down. Sometimes it can get pitched like partially up. You want to make sure the engine is all the way vertically into the water. Next step you're going to want to do is make sure the gear shifter is in neutral. Sometimes the engines get stopped in gear, and if you pull start it with it in gear, you're going to have a nasty surprise. So make sure the engine's in neutral before you start it. Let's check the checklist. Next thing you want to do is check how much fuel you have. You want to make sure you have at least half of a tank. We have roughly half a tank here, so we're good to go. I'm going to make sure that the vent on the top of the fuel cap is slightly open, which this one is. That just makes sure that there's no vacuum generated in the tank. Make sure you have good fuel flow to the engine by squeezing the bulb a couple of times. If it's firm, you're good. You don't have to squeeze it anymore. Ensure that the gas line has a nice secure fitting to both the tank and the engine. And then you're good to start the procedure to start the engine. So the throttle arm has a little indicator that says slow, start, fast. You want to make sure that the arrow is pointed at the start line, which is roughly halfway up the throttle. You're going to make sure that your kill switch is firmly attached around the kill button, and then pull out the choke knob. When you're at start, the kill switch is on and the choke is out, then you want to get in a safe and secure position with one hand on the engine so you can pull start it without pulling yourself overboard. If you're leaning too far over and you pull it, it might launch you off the boat. So when I'm in my secure position, I give it a good tug, start, and start, and start. All right, we're going to do the BART start. I'm going to choke in, throttle up most of the way to fast, and give it a good tug. All the way. Engine's going. Safely kill it. All you have to do is push and hold the red button. Now that the engine pre-start checklist is good to go, you can try starting it as if it's warm. So sometimes these engines get used previous in the day to when you turn up to use the boat. And so it's always worth trying at least once with the choke in case it'll get started while it's warm. So I'll get in my safe position with one hand on the engine so that I don't launch myself off the back of the boat, and give it a pull. Throttle down to slow, and the engine's on. Now we can safely kill the engine when we're finished with it by pressing and holding the red button until the engine sputters out. And that's the engine started and stopped. Once the engine is started and you've revved the throttle all the way back to slow here, take a look at the side or the back of the engine for the stream of cooling water. If no cooling water is coming out of the engine, immediately stop the engine because it might overheat. Ready to start the engine. Now you can hear the engine is in a high rev, the gas is on too high, so if I can throttle down to slow, you hear it slowing down. Getting into a safe state where we can change gears without grinding the gears. You never want to use the gear selector if the engine is revved up, if you're giving it a lot of gas. When it's loud like this, it's really loud like that, it's not safe to use the gear shifter. Make sure you've revved all the way to slow before you shift into gear. Now that the engine is started, it's running perfectly, you can kill it or stop the motor by pushing and holding this red button here so the engine sputters out. In general, we discourage the use of reverse gear on our engines because some of the engines will pick up when you put them into reverse. Also, the boat doesn't handle very well when it's moving backwards. You want to handle your forwards as much as you can. However, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need to go into reverse, make sure that you keep a hand on the top of the cowling of the engine so that when you put it into gear, you can help prevent the engine from kicking up on you. Ready? Now that we have the engine started, we're ready to depart the dock. At Columbia, we generally try to leave the engines true or straight along the center line of the boat and do most of our steering with the tiller. However, sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where you're in really tight quarters and you might need to use the engine to help you maneuver. In general, if you turn the engine while using the tiller, it reduces the boat's turning radius by about half. But in general, if you can avoid it, you want to keep the engine on center line and do all of your steering with the tiller because it simplifies the maneuvering process on the